George. But basically, John was, they tried to disappear him a couple of times. They first tried to disappear him on July the 2nd, 2019, where they held him in, the Sussex police, Katie Bourne's little crew, was sent down to abduct and kidnap him from outside the Royal Court of Justice, which was out of their jurisdiction, where subsequently he took a 9-day holiday in Eastbourne Mental Health Unit, Bodiam Unit, before he was released with a clean bill of health. Since then, he went back in to the Ministry of Defence, had a 100-page document where he was again abducted and kidnapped by Holborn Police Station, who denied all knowledge of ever seeing him. Then he was taken to Eastbourne Custody Mental Health Unit again, where he spent, I believe, 2 days, before they released him. Again, clean bill of health with Kate Bourne's crew waiting for him to kidnap him, put him in a prison, put him in a court, threw him in a prison. He was held in Wandsworth prison first, I do believe. Then he was sent to Chelmsford prison, where he was chucked out of the prison and stuck in Chichester mental health ward. They held him for quite a while before they actually now put on a mental health fraud on him, saying that his grand delusions, because of the phone calls that there was also because he was phoning while he was in prison, and because of his conversations on the phone, of his connection to the Royal Commission, which is also involved because his case is involved in the Royal Commission. And basically, I mean, there's a lot of people, plus, like I say, with what you've been exposing with him, George, that they want him out of the way, they want him silenced. Plus, all the evidence that he has got. I mean, he stated and had shown that he got, never mind to Gordon Bowden's evidence and all the rest of the things that he was doing with the children, going around the country taking statements from survivors. He also had was it 179 large feet of files that were full of hundreds of thousands of documents with forensic, all sorts. And there was in those, there was also just two of them off the top of my head. One was about and about the thermite being used to destroy them, to blow them. And another one was...
You're not very what is thermite? I cannot make it out clearly.
Well, the same as what they used in the Twin Towers to destroy the engines of the planes. They put thermite in the engines up on the Concords. He'd got the documentation on that. He also got the documentation that it was a Serco hit team that took out Dr. David Kelly, which they've got a 100 or a 70-year denote silence. You can't follow the information released. The same day that David...
But all of that is very far back in time. I can remember being in Dundee, making the videos with John, and all of the inquests into the towers in London, where the terrorists are always... Did you know that the London Bridge terror man that was Abd Diwali is actually in the House of Lords, and he is Lord Abd Diwali? That is the killing of a man by a person called Gunnar Rigby, so that the Beatles and Paul McCartney and all of the powers that be can laugh at everything that is Islam, and that is the story that is going to be told about Boris Johnson now. So Abd Diwali is in the House of Lords. And I can show you a picture of that if you don't believe me, or the people who are listening do not believe me. It's absolutely cynical, and he and the others that were involved have massive corporate directorates. All of them are billionaires, and that is the world's biggest secrets. And that is why they try and launch ethnic hatred between the Islamic groups. Yeah, and everybody is on the edge, yeah, thinking that it might hit us and our children at any time. And that is how the governments get away with the massive creation of they've got a financial hoard from the coronavirus, and the whole story was told by the German author of the books that proclaim that Adolf Hitler is the cousin of Rothschild, and that is the Adolf Hitler families. The author of those books is called Mathis, and he's a brave and objective man. And that is the Mathis families that were in the Viennese region with Adolf's families. Adolf was reared in a place called Spittal, and we have a Spittal in my hometown, just 20 miles down on the coast. Yeah, and that is the massive attempts that Stuart Houston then became a leader in Ireland and in Great Britain, and he was a philosopher champion. He is Adolf Hitler's nephew. And all of those families, there's a Patrick Hitler, and all of them were sent into Britain to train so that they could be double agents in the wars. And that is the issuance of all of the money and the owners of the biggest gas camps that are Rothschild that condoned all of that happening. And that is IG Farben. And now in Great Britain, they have massive gas lorries running along the roads with UK Farben written as their corporate title. And nothing ever happens to Rothschild, and that is in the hearings the man that was the Dutch leader, Bernhard the Nazi as he used to be called, he became the boss at the directors of AG Farben, and he walked away from the war inquests because he's the king of that country. And then he flitted out of, I think he was in the Netherlands first, and then he went to Germany after the Nuremberg trials. That is Bernhard the Nazi, and that is the ownership of the biggest. They had enough nerve gases in that place to kill the world's population 15 times over. You've heard of it?
I've heard that one, mate.
You've never heard of it?
I've heard of the company, but I hadn't heard that story. I hadn't heard that story before. I knew the. I mean, what you know when you say that there was uproar, is this where? I mean, for the people, the general people to understand this, to understand that the actual world is agent, we're all being played, and how deep this really goes to most people. So these actors, so to say, i.e. Hitler and both, was they all trained up in Tavistock then? Is it the Tavistock institution that has been done their part this whole show?
Yeah, the Tavistock name is used all over the world, and it's in the south of England, and that is, I think, where the treasonous spies that were the Blunt family trained, and also the religious do-gooders that are Jehovah's Witnesses, Taze Russell, and all of them, I believe, are Tavistock trainees. And that is the massive, in the Jehovah's Witnesses, even in the Scottish borders, there are massive bloodline trees that lead to those identifiable names. And since I started making videos about 15 years ago, all of them have changed their names from the name they originally used when they moved into my hometown. And all of them are on Burke's Peerage, and that is the richest families in the world, and that is the Somerset place. John of Gaunt's story that we told the last time, most of William the Conqueror's friends inhabited the south coast, and that is You remember that we used to get all worked up about our close friend Cahill, and Gordon Bowden and I were accused of being mindless trolls by Cahill's followers. Cahill is the advisor on finance out of northern France as a family, and that is the advisor to the Queen of England on wealth. Kevin Cahill, we used to think he was a hero, and he ran Ryanair, I think, and he's published a book that makes him look like a hero, and that is them allowing the papacy to be advised like the Queen of England. That is what has happened to the world's wealth, and the bankers get the rest. It's absolutely obscene. And every war we've had is the papal versus the archduke. And that is, even in the Scottish borders, I've been reading, as you can tell, the history of Austro-Hungarian warfare and peacetime. And one of the great heroes in the region that I'm making this video in is the Hume politician who negotiated the treaty on the Hume Bridge in Sarajevo, where the Archduke was eventually assassinated. Now we can go back to Boris Johnson and his relatives that are the equivalent of the Archdukes. So Boris's grandpa's surname is Kemal. The name of the new vice president in America, the very first one to ever be appointed, because the whole of the regimes are kind of panicky now since they started fighting against each other. So could you see the tension in Joe Biden and in Boris's family's eyes as they began to try and cheat each other to the White House once again? But Kamal is the name of Boris Johnson's grandpa.
You mean Boris Johnson, or do you mean Trump there?
No, Boris Johnson is descended from the Ataturks and the families that are the Kemals, that are the leadership team. And if you look up his family tree that was discovered even by the BBC in that programme that studies peripherally, they did in that proclaim that he was actually of German descent, and his real name is Boris Pfeffel, and that is the P and F joke for the Pfeffers and all the families that are aligned on this. And I would hate to think that people would die of the coronavirus, but Pfizer, P and F, have won the contract for the new putting down of the thing that has decimated the entire world for nearly 12 months now. And the reason that they're having to up the ante on security in the coronavirus world is that we've not yet gotten into the coldest regions of the calendar year. Remember, it started in March, and we've now got to go through the end of December and the coldest period in certainly the northern hemisphere, and that is why they've changed the rules in the last 2 days and the last 2 weeks, and everybody was lit up that you could get free food on the quiet days in the week. That only lasted for a fortnight, but the pool of money that the Mathis man from Germany has calculated that has come from the coronavirus already, what did I say, was it 14 trillion?
14 trillion.
Yeah, and that is Miles Mathis. All of you should go and look at his writings. He's shown Hitler's family tree, the role of Stuart Houston and all the families who came to Britain and became prominent academics like Houston, and they are all related to the legendary Wagner that wrote about the god Thor? Can you remember the song? I forget what the songs were called, but that was all the Norse legends in Northern Europe. And sadly, that is where, in the Holy Wars there, every one of the residual pagans that had survived up to that period in historic history, they were either executed on bonfires or they were hung from Thor's oak. And that is the story of when you uproot that tree, and all of this happened at the place that is the birthplace for Trump. His hometown in the Palatinate is Karlstad. And if you remember the movie that is Air Force One, which was fabulous, because it allowed Harrison Ford to become the hero again at the back of the plane, and everybody has to jump off the plane because it's been kidnapped by the really good actor who just 2 years before had made the movies as in the role of Winston Churchill. That is Gary Oldman, and that is the Goldman banking dynasty, and all of them are descended from that Warner Brothers link. So if I were to look up the Warner Brothers, what do you want to talk? Can you tell them about what John Paterson's had to put up with, and how?
What John Paterson's actually going through now. I mean, they've classed it as grand delusional. It's the same thing. It's like everything else. Same with John Monroe when John Monroe was done. See, you cannot tell these people anything. And to be truthful, as far as it's blatantly obvious to me that whoever's doing this is being told to do what they're doing. John was put in there. They couldn't hold him. They tried to do everything that they can to hold him. So the last resort is always the last resort, which is mental health fraud. So basically, they've got him in there and they've got him down as a grand delusional because they're stating that he said he was working as or with the Royal Commission, which is not. He's always said that his case was a part of the Royal Commission, and that's what they're holding him on a lie. They also falsified some of his documents earlier when I was in contact with him. But right now they're giving him, I forget the name of the drug, but it's for schizophrenia. The man's completely competent. I mean, the man was stood in front of a High Court judge. So, I mean, he's still in the case now, and they're holding him from being a part of that case, and he's needed to go in there because his case is actually up in front on the 14th and 15th of December. Well, Edward Elliott, and he needs to be there as the witness because it's his case, it's all of their cases. Edward Elliott is running 200 cases.
So can you remind it, when I looked at John's, the last time we talked, there was no correspondence allowed between the public and John, or John being allowed to let any letters out. But when I looked at the topics that he was covering in the Gmails that he was sending to his committed colleagues, they were all on multi-intellectual issues and the abuse of this country by the politicians.
Yeah, sure, yeah. But not only was it, because I mean, first thing, I mean, the actual case, John Paterson's case that was brought into the Royal Commission was when he first went in and reported Gordon Bowden's evidence. He went in and he handed the evidence as well as reporting it. He filmed it while he was reporting it.
And I think Miliband resigned the following weekend. You remember the pictures of him shaking hands with Miliband? They're from Eastern Europe, like Boris is. They're Lithuania, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens in the wartime is it becomes a massive human flux, and all of the people that launched those death camps become the earliest Forbes rich listers. And I used to be friends with some of them, but all of a sudden it was impossible to talk on Skype because they took me off it, and I've never been allowed back on, and you learned that this morning. And that's the reason that in that period, since I talked about Queen Victoria's babies and the Rothschilds that sired them with Sean Maguire, I've not been able to make a video or get on the internet to make a video until you showed me how it was done this morning. But yeah, it's quite cynical, but as I said this morning, some of the things that happen, like the fascists that lived in London, I forget what they were called, but it was the Bloomsbury set. That is, you mentioned the bloodline that was it is, oh crikey.
Let me just finish the piece of what you're thinking about that.
Yeah.
So John was then, he made a video of that, which he then subsequently got charged with malicious broadcasting, which they then rejected those charges. But in the meantime, he got done and he was put in prison. He was put in prison basically for 6 weeks, so he had to serve 3 weeks. And that case then was brought into the Royal Commission. Edward Cullen found and brought him into the Royal Commission. So that was one of John's.
I'm not so sure that I like the Royal Commission or what happened there. What was their mission, and what was the protocols that they had to pursue to get something done? Because John, unbelievably, with his background, he had impressed the Queen of England.
Well, the point is, I mean, this is the point. But the point is, she's being held, basically. She's being held to do her job, the position that she's in the seat to do.
Queenie.
So basically, one second. I'll just switch that. So John, well, yeah, I mean, the Royal Commission itself is basically to clean up shop, to expose all the corruption within the whole system, to clean up the government, to replace all the ones that are corrupted within the system, within the judicial system, within the police system, and to remove them. And that's what the remedy process is, what it was all about.
And the Queen of England commissioned that.
Well, she actually stated on the 19th of December that there will be a Royal Commission. But the whole lot are completely ignoring the fact there's a Royal Commission. And Edward Ellis is meant to be working with the Queen, with the Queen's permission, since 2004, collating all this evidence with all the people to bring it forward. But, obviously, until the people rise up and demand that it's there, Edward's got the whole system's all there. So, I mean, it's just a matter of, I mean, right now, the last time he was in court, which was on the 3rd of December, the barrister said to the judge, by the end of this session, I expect him to be locked up, basically. She wanted Edward Ellis locked up. Edward Ellis has got like 10%, 5% left of his kidneys. They've been messing around with him. They've been trying to section in as well. And basically, once Edward goes, once Edward's out the window, that's it. Because he was the one that was leading the whole 200 people together, holding all their cases together as one in a Royal Commission that he collected since 2004. I mean, he's got all his stuff. His brother was killed, and the theft of, and all exposing Tony Blair, David Cameron, Theresa May. All of this, it's all in there.
So do you remember that Greg Hallett was also given the same role? Yeah, he's supposed to be the person that is checking out the true King of England story, and he put his law cases through Queenie's doors, but it was not through the palace. It was into the back door at Downing Street. All of it was filmed with the London police walking along beside him. But the name of the man that was the launch of psychiatry, was out of the Bloomsbury set, and the families that committed suicide as believers in mental health instability. There were 3 brothers, and all of them succeeded. One failed to commit suicide, and their name was Wittgenstein. That is the Bloomsbury set, and that is the German connection again. That is the Warner Brothers, and everything that gets into the palace of Saxe, Coburg, and Gotha. Even David Attenborough is Battenberg, and all of it is the same families that launched the marriage of their cousins, or closer than that, and all of it led to those massive wars, and all of the leaders in all of the wars are picked by Rothschilds and sired by them, and that's why Greg Hallett was killed rather than listened to when he brought the evidence to the policeman at the end of Downing Street. They were told to go round the back. All of it was filmed in a video, and it's very rare to find that video and the full involvement of the London police in it anymore since he disappeared. But that has now turned into an endless looking for a victim that may not ever exist. But I believe that now the Rothschilds sell their books from St. James's Place, and the book, the biggest one of all, that I asked our mutual friend John Paterson to go and find for me and us, was How to Take Over the World, a Right Royal Con, with a picture of the Queen's half-brother, Adolf Hitler, on the front cover of the book, and the Queen on her cavalry horse, saluting at the concept that they were going to take over the world in the series of wars that we had since 1901, and that is when Edward VII, the Edwardian era, happened, and that is that is World War I, World War II, and everything that happens all across North Africa. And we were talking this morning about the legacy of long wars, like the American War of Independence. So in all of Greg Hallett's writing, he explained how the Queen of England was still receiving tax payments from everybody in the colony that is America, and that goes on right up to 2050. And Greg, I believe, was shut up. The whole of his website is decimated now. He used to make 90-minute videos, and we've been showing the world this morning how when you get to Austro-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, everybody gets so nervous about them being their neighbours. That is where the Rothschilds came from. That is the Ashkenazi Jew that is Rothschild, and everybody then has to believe that the Palestinian versus Israeli armed massacres is something to do with Jewish freedom, and that is the story, right back into the Bible, that is so contentious, and that is the story that me and Maguire in Ireland have been analysing, and the earliest families to be the papal bloodlines that are still the richest on this earth are the Al Pacinos in Hollywood, that the Warner brothers invented and dragged behind them when they created that movie-making empire. They came from Krasnoselk, which is Kaiser Bill's hunting lodge. And the four master masons that were Warner, I forget what their names were, but all of them were Jewish names too. And I have nothing against the Jewish nation, but the concept that all of the treaties that were signed and all of the wars that Tony Blair engaged in the Holy Lands, it's not about religion and it's not about ownership, it's about the oil wealth. And that is why I believe that the gods are being parodied in those places, because God is gold, oil and diamonds, and the richest people in the world are now the people that have been for centuries the fleecing families. That includes Lord Sainsbury, one of Britain's richest men. His family were in the original black nobility fleecing teams that invaded the whole of North Africa and the Holy Lands in inverted commas. And
Would that be Charles as well then?
yeah, Prince Charles is now the leader of the, I forget whether it's the black nobility or the something and Garter. Yeah, so that is a traditional role for our leadership team, and that is why they act like butchers in the wartime, but the only thing that they're interested in is filling their coffers. Yeah, and their troops do not get coffins. And it's really, really sad.
Is it filling their coffins, or is it draining the world and starving the people to death? That's the
Well,
way.
well, the earliest crusades were in the 13th century, and even then they tied in Germany and Austria with the kidnapping of one of the characters in the story. It's in the Robin Hood movie. You remember the Robin of Nottingham? But the real reason for the combination of those stories is that is King John the First in the Robin Hood movie sitting laughing at him when he chucks the deer onto his table. Yeah, that's Errol Flynn's version of Robin Hood. But King John was the man who had to go all across Europe and North Africa, and he ended up having to go to Austria to try and pay off the Austrian people who had stolen his brother. I forget what all of the story was, but that is the North Africa's visited, and do you now understand that is the Ben Yusuf? My favourite movie is El Cid, and the last time I made a movie on the internet, I explained to the world that the woman that was the heroine in El Cid, who's she's Lorraine, Sophia Loren, and it was Charlton Heston and her. She is actually descended directly. I think her grandpa was the boss of the fascist Italy that was Mussolini. She is the niece of Mussolini. And all of it is those families that have been intermarried for the advantage of land and power and wealth. And the biggest of all is the ownership of the global banks. And that is the glorious revolution that we talked about with John Paterson, and everything was lucid, and everybody realised that how Cromwell manipulated the parliaments, and everybody was subjected to the potato famines in Ireland. And then all of a sudden, you've got World War I and World War II breaking out, and the sinking of the Titanic and the Lusitania to cover the fact that the central banks have been privatised. And in Russia, the Tsars got gunned down because they knew, like the rebellious president in America, that the banks were being stolen from them. I think that's Andrew Jackson walking across the hill in the song.
Yeah.
But the Tsars were massacred, and now they are actually the residual ones were married to Britain's richest man, who's Gerald Grosvenor. That is Natalia Grosvenor is his first wife, and the baby that they bore is to be his inheritor. And it's amazing that all of those names are still there, but they're still the same families. That is, Rasputin was in the team that was trying to compose and keep sober and brave the girls that became nurses in that family. And that is Rasputin, and then the plant that is Putin, that is just an abomination. They're the world's richest people. He used to go out with Melania, she used to go out with Melania Trump. And it's the same for what was Rupert Murdoch's third wife? Wendy Deng. She's had several husbands. I think she's had 4 husbands. Rupert Murdoch was the third, and then that woman that is deathly white came in and took over as number 4. But all of them, that is Rupert Murdoch, who had tried, before I published the story, he bought for his son Lackland. That is the same name as King John I, that signed the treaty for the black nobility that allowed them to ravage the Holy Lands. And that is name some of the great treaties in English history? The Magna Carta.
Yeah.
So that is King John I. And what the stories that were...
One of the Magna Cartas was... Which one was it of the Magna Cartas? Because there was more than one.
I can't remember, but the statues that commemorate it are right in the middle of London, right in the heart of London. It's near Paddington or somewhere like that. And Hallett used to talk about those too, but then they started to introduce umpteen body doubles. No one could know any truths, and in the last week I've been getting loads of folk ringing me because they know I know what I told you about Kamal, and there's much more to be told on that. Let me see if I can find some of the pictures that explain.
Are they on your site?
Yeah, I've just got them on my open pages of my Google.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'll send a link to your video that you put on your end for people to see.
Yeah,
as well.
This is the first one I've made in ages, and I'm just talking about looking things up on YouTube. But you'd better do the Kamal investigations quickly, because it'll be gone. It's only a week since the...
Who's the one that's introduced? Is this you talking about Joe Biden?
Yes. So the woman that Biden introduced as the first person to be the leader in American history as a female, she's called Kamal, like Boris's family and the Ataturks and all of those folk. The sinister bits are the bits that take in the Hamarals of Prague, and that is the families that descend to Pope Benedict. Remember, he was chucked out in disgrace.
Yeah.
And that is Pope Benedict. That is directly, he was born in the same town as Adolf. I forget what it was. And for a laugh, the earliest pictures that they published of him, they've got a totem pole and him leaning on it and laughing on it, because he's killed every pagan on this earth and become the richest man on this earth before it was found out by me and John Paterson. Yeah, that's why the Pope resigned. The video's in my collection, and all of it is years and years ago now, but John Paterson was in it, and the mate that ran my safe house when I was in...
Didn't what's his name? What was his name? Kevin Annette. Didn't he claim to have something to do with the fact that Pope Benedict resigned as well?
Kevin who?
Kevin Annette from Canada. He was exposing the fact that the Queen had taken 10 children.
So if you look up George Lees, John Paterson, and Croft, he was my friend in Kirknewton, and I saw him again for the other day. He provided me with a safe house for nearly a year, and most of my big hitting videos that have now been banned because of the anti-Semitic claims that turn out to be the ancestry of Adolf Hitler. Yeah, that is why my YouTube channels and things have been shut down. And I've been arrested several times. I've not had a home of my own since for nearly 8 years now. It's been, and now I'm just living off my savings as a professor, but there's not much left. Yeah, but that does not worry me. All that happens is totally evil, and my intent is to reverse it. It's
the truth's got to be told, mate. Yeah.
well, yeah, and that is what John used to be ultra besotted with the linkage to that woman who was the political rep. Her predecessor was in the Churchill bloodline, and as Greg Hallett told the world, that is the Queen of England's parent. Yeah, and it is Bill Clinton's father too, and Bill Clinton founded. Bill Clinton, he went across, and the interim periods were all explained by Greg Hallett, and so Clinton is the biological son of the Queen of England, and Churchill was the father, because George VI was incapable of having viable babies, and the ones that he sired died on the gurney. According to all of those stories that Greg released and have now been taken off the internet, there are none of the videos that Greg Hallett actually made are on the current Greg Hallett's video collections. And that's Fetzer, that is Setzer on that Heinz family tree that we talked about in the last video, that the people can look up. What was the titles for those videos, Andy?
Which ones?
The ones that we made on John of Gaunt and everybody descending from him that is in the New World Order bloodline trees, that in one side descends to Trump and on the other side descends to Hillary Roddenroth Clinton, and the Percys are on both sides, and it's a massively important that it takes in the Lancashire families and the Yorkshire families that have been at war for the kingdom and the whole of Europe as Plantagenets for centuries, and they also invade the Holy Lands.
I've scoured John's internet archive, and I can't see any with you on it.
Oh, no. So if you want to see John Paterson, you need to look at my YouTube channel, and you'll see the videos we made on the Rothschild banking empire, and I've made umpteen on the massive sex island scandals. That is just the cover. So Lord Mandelson is the cover for one of the earliest bankers that founded the Bank of America, and that is Lord Mandelson is the cover for Mandel House in the, what is this, the name of the American issuance of money place? Ben Bernanke and the place where the treasury that Bernanke and then the woman runs. Since the Titanic was sunk, and that is everything that happened in Woodrow Wilson's period. And then we get World War I right on the back of that. They actually joined it right in the middle of the war, and that was the founding on Christmas Day, when no one was in the White House to vote against it, of the Federal Reserve Bank being founded that year. So the Lusitania went under, and the Titanic went under, and all of it is lovely and romantic, and the music is beautiful, but the biggest the biggest interest rate that you can get is 1%. And I think even the House of Commons has to borrow from the privately owned lending houses, and they have to pay on that loan 60% interest to the owners of the crooked bank since World War I was being fought.
The Clayfield doctrine, which exposed all governments and corporations too, because they're all coming from a corporation, all the fiat coming from a corporation.
Yeah.
So that was what it was 23. 23. I'm not too sure the date that Clayfield doctrine that came out, but that exposed and it stated, because that just fell perfectly in line with everything that the Baron David Ward had exposed with his affidavit in 2013 and subsequently in 2015, which was an unrebutted affidavit statement of truth that all governments, by their own confession, by acquiescence, by even giving word of assent by acquiescence, because they failed to rebut the simple fact that there is no government. The people of the UK are not governed, because without a wetting signature, there is no authority, there is no consent, and without the consent, they can't enforce any of their acts and statutes that they are enforcing on them, because they're in their own words and their own terminology stated that it requires the consent of the government, consent equal to a wetting signature, and therefore if there's no wetting signature, there's no government, and without a government, there can't be a government. So he went a different way around, exposing the fact that the government isn't a government, it's a corporation. So without, there's no two ways of that. There's no one can argue or dispute it. They can argue and dispute it, they can't prove it. The simple fact is we do not have an English government. It is a corporation.
Right.
i.e. the whole country is a corporation.
Yeah, you see, that's been the case since...
This all goes back basically because this was the plan as far as what I could see of it. When Hitler ended the Second World War, or should I say when it was ended, it wasn't ended. That's when he pulled in all the corporations to unite. And that's the whole thing. They took over the whole world with corporations. The whole world, basically, so that they can bankrupt the whole corporations, meaning every country has now become a corporation so that they can capture all the countries.
Yeah, so that's exactly what they're describing when this man, Miles Mathis, talks about it. And he gives away the secrets, who the families are that are descended from Adolf. Yeah, and that is in the earliest part of the PDF that I've read so far. It is the Clunes families, and it is that. What was the name of the one that?
George Clooney.
No, it was. I talked to Sean Maguire about it, and he was a little comedian on the telly on a Saturday night, and I mentioned his name to you before we started. Somebody. Chegwin, yeah. So that is all in the writings of that man from Germany, and he's a very, very brave man too. And it explains in his writings how Hitler's family were there. And did you know that the Bushes were in America right up to 1937? Hello?
They was a part of it anyway, or a part of it as far as I'm concerned. So that's when they set up, because he then became the CIA, they formed the CIA.
Yeah, that's right. So 2 generations of them, they were the leaders of...
They put on the Germans that they wanted under Operation Paperclip, and then formulated whatever they formulated over there in America.
Oh yeah, Paperclip's just one of dozens of what happened. It is all just a massive bloodbath. But the families that came with him include Mengele, Goebbels, and Scorzerny. That was Hitler's bodyguard. And there was a man called, he was an inventor, Tesla. And it was Gordon Bowden and his friends that showed me it. And that is the Bush family are all pictured with those people that eventually... do you believe in reincarnation?
I do, yes.
Yeah, so do I. And that is the families coming out again and again and again. And the one that several of them are now appearing in the cabinets that have been picked. So
So are you? I mean,
what is the one who's got a stammer in his name? He replaced Stammer. Yeah, he's a.
God, he's with them all. I've checked him out. The Leader Party, the head of the
leader of Labour. Yeah, he's, I believe, descended from those.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all a massive global piss take, and if you can invent in a test tube several of the next leaders that used to be the leaders of the enemy states, that is effectively what they're trying to do, and that's why it's so funny for them. I don't know how I don't know how the science of that works, but just look at.
So going, because we was going to talk about that at Paterson. So, I mean, because as far as I'm concerned, they're all actors. Every part of it's all an actor. It's the whole thing's a stage anyway. So so Trump's connection to Biden. This is just a stage show to get the end result that they're getting. And so, what's Trump's part of this story then?
Oh, he's massively connected to the gold rush in the Yukon. He dodged the draft for Vietnam. His family, when everybody was in Vietnam, ran a brothel in the Yukon for the gold rush. Yeah, and all of that was published decades ago by me. All of it has been taken away from me in the places. That's the period when I was in jail, and that was when my house was stormed by those people. And the Mackay family are his ancestors here, and that becomes the comedies that is Porridge. And the jailer was Mackay, and on and on and on it goes. And we used to go to the island that they were on and spend holidays there. And it was quite stunning how you saw massive bouts of drunkenness when we went to the places where the Mackays were offering us the lodging homes. But yeah, that's too small beer to make a difference. But I think it's all tied into that ownership of the world joke. Do you remember the film Local Hero? They got Americans coming across to become oil magnates, and the Scotsman that played the jailer in the Porridge comedy was the actor that sat the American down and said to him, you know, if I take a handful of sand and I offered to sell it to you, yeah, how much would you give me for it? And he showed him how how easy it was to fool people. I'm stunned that you haven't seen the movie. Everybody in Scotland's seen it. But that is...
What was the movie again?
Local Hero.
How old is it?
And the Americans are coming across to try and get oil rigs into the local bays in the beautiful little villages like the Mackays used to live in, on the islands and on the mainland. And it was It was a nice movie, but it was just a comedy. I just wondered if you'd seen it. But it's portraying the American entrepreneurs exactly as they were. But you know, the whole of it is the families that have led all the wars since the Plantagenet Wars happened are still doing it, and that is Lord Sainsbury, who's the second in command at that massive thing that Prince Charles is the leader of. And they're even got in Kelso's my hometown, and a citizen of there. She's now been brought back into the public eye since they started to panic. But she was Mary Peters, and she won in the Russian Olympics the pentathlon gold medal. She is one of the leading females in the Order of the Garter and Black Nobility fleecing team. And I don't know why she was picked. She's of Irish descent. I don't know whether or not it's the continuation of the Catholic versus Protestant or the potato famine massacres, but all of it is really sad that they can only continue that way. And I've never been able to meet any of my politicians since I met Michael Moore in the library at Coldstream, and then he had to resign, because everybody then knew, just before one of the elections, that he was on the boards with George W. Bush. That's Michael Moore, Secretary of State for Scotland, and the last travel abroad that he did before he was forced to resign by me was to Iraq for the oil wealth in a helicopter. And then I saw him and met him with my wife in one of the pubs that has now become their art gallery in my hometown in Kelso. And that art gallery had, for a laugh at the killing of the world's people, a model of the Titanic coming through the back. And it was run by the Haig family, and that is the Butcher Haig relatives, and Huggins Haig, and those are the earliest papal bloodlines, according to the research that Sean Maguire and I have done. And I've never been allowed to talk to the public about that in any event since we discovered it. It's the most sensational news. That is Al Pacino being God. Yeah, and that is the earliest papal bloodlines, and Higgins is the Irish president, and that is why Sean Maguire has been my closest friend until the social media locked me out of their gates and would not let me back in. Yeah, it's...
But we know they can do with silences, that's all they keep doing. So did the model of the
well, some of them are. Say again.
Did the model of the Titanic have a true number of the portholes? Because the Titanic was the Olympic. The Olympic was what was sunk. The Titanic was, should I say, the Titanic was turned into the Olympic, wasn't
it? There was a novel written 10 years before the Titanic was sunk called The Sinking of the Titan. And that is how the New World Order proclaim that we're going to do some terrorism. Yeah, and that is why the helicopters were brought down at the Mull of Kintyre. And that is McCartney and all of the links to Liverpool and Germany since Hitler and his nephew trained there. Yeah, and that is Beryl Bainbridge was the English woman that was good enough and had the wits to archive all of those Irish connections and publish it in a proper book. And that is Stuart Houston, that is the parentage of Wagner, the fabulous musician.
Yeah, so what? I was going to ask you the question. Do you know for the reasons why? I mean, I've heard other reasons for the reason, but what was the real reason why they killed Paul McCartney and placed and swapped him?
You take it all without questioning it, like you do with the Twin Towers. It's a massive joke. The folk that were in the Twin Towers disasters, I made 2 videos within 2 weeks of it, and all of them are business people that are on the board. That is the Bank of England that was called what is the woman that is in the police force in the comedies in London, and she's got the same name as the building. It's the something Towers.
Oh, Faulty Towers.
No. The London terror in 2017. It is the Morgan Grenfell. So Joyce Grenfell is a fucking comedian. Yeah, and that is the Grenfell bankers are the bosses at the Bank of England. Yeah, and that is Christopher Reeves, that is Superman. He died in a wheelchair because he's pretending to be a god like the Superman. He is the leader of the Bank of England. Only the people that saw my videos know that, and the rest of it is done by people like Lord Abidawali, who's in the House of Commons and was alleged to have slit the throat of the Beatles' product that was Eleanor Rigby, the war widow. Gunnar Rigby is Abidawali. He is a millionaire at the HSBC banking group, and all of it used to be published on the front page of my website till the powers that be took it down. And that is what you're telling me, that you believe the inverted story that Paul McCartney is a good guy who died. That is the McCartneys of Liverpool that used to trade with impoverished India, and that is Lord McCartney's earliest contacts in trading across the world. And the rest of it is just the same families. Bismarck was an investor in the Bank of England at that time, and Gordon Bowden and I made massive videos on those themes, and they had links even to the James Bond families, and my local MP that was, he was the boss in the Scottish Parliament for a while. He was Lib Dem, David Steele. Yeah, and all of them would not look me in the eye, but they would not think twice about chucking you in jail when those judiciary actors were let loose on me. And I think they now know the power of God's, because everything that has happened in the period where they were putting me in jail and divorcing me without any evidence, that there were massive lightning and thunderstorms and floods all across the Tweed and Teviot region, and the Teviot region is where Queen Victoria's only legitimate baby was sired in secret in Carlisle Castle, and all of that is the original Greg Hallett's output and the stories that he told to Jim Fetzer, who I believe is a double agent. He's Setzer, and they are right up in the first 7 and 8 of the Forbes Rich Listers, with the Butlins family that is Born Leisure, that is Butlins, that used to employ me as a fishing gilly. Then they realised I was intelligent, and I realised that they are the Austrian emperors. Born Leisure is the legacy of Bornemisza, which is about 7th or 8th on the Forbes Rich List, just below Heinz. That is the flavoured sauces that I made my inaugural lecture on in Dunedin, because I was a lecturer in neuroscience and talked about taste buds. Little at that time did I know that the Heinz family were above the Setzer family on the Rich List family tree, somewhere down with Butlins. Do you get it? That is born leisure, is born missa. Their brothers helped train Pope Benedict's brother. And if you go into the Maharal of Prague stories, that is they have a false god in many of the stories. It was what was the little Casper character in the cartoons?
The ghost.
Casper the ghost. So that is the method that they use to bring in a false Messiah, and that in the Maharal of Prague's story is I forget what they call him, but if you look up Maharal of Prague, that is the families that descend to Pope Benedict, and that they are the sultans of swing in America. What was the name of them? Mark Knopfler.
The group.
Yeah, Knopfler.
Yeah.
If let's have a look on my website. If you go to that website I showed you this morning, and you look up, Pope Benedict, you'll see that there is they're called the Lubavitchers, and that is the earliest families that came from Eastern Europe, conquered France, and became William the Conqueror's wealth providers. And that is the Maharal of Prague, and that is the cousin of Prince Charles, and he is, I forget what they call him. It's like what was it when you had a full moon? You could get your heart cut out or something. He's Vlad the Impaler, and that is the aristocracy in Austro-Hungary where the wars get launched again. It's it's never ending, and that I wish we could find that page that is. I should not have so many sites open.
I've got the
Maharal of Prague. Yeah, so he's in the bloodline tree that takes Prince Charles into their family, and that is the Sultans of Swing that become the singers of the song about creating the boundaries in America where the Americans have to pay the taxes to Britain because they lost the Revolutionary War. And Greg Hallett died telling all of those stories right in front of the public eye in 90-minute videos. There are none of them left on the internet. And do you see the role of Setzer now? He's never spoken to me since we made videos on the wealth of the world coming into the earliest Italian banks, and that is the Coutts Bank, one of the richest in the world and one of the earliest. I will not say any more about it for reverence to the family that run it. Yeah, and they know who they are, and I do too, and it's time for civilization to go back to peace and welfare for everyone. Yeah, and I think I might.
I've done enough.
Yeah, sorry, I can't get the. If you look up Boris Johnson on Wikipedia, you'll see that Kamal is at the top of his story, and that is the name of the new woman. But because she's a Negro, I don't know what the linkage is genealogically or whether there is one, but even if it's just like a poem and they've sunk all that money into their vaults already,
Boris Johnson on Wikipedia.
Yeah, so is Kamal at the top with what was the hat that Tommy Cooper died in? Fez. Kemal is the grandparent of Boris Johnson, and the fez is on Kemal in that photo's image, and World War I was sparked. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just looking for it. I'm looking for it. I can't see it on Wikipedia on Boris Johnson.
So World War I was sparked in Sarajevo. Yeah, that's the Ukrainian capitals, and it's nothing to do with the Holy Lands, but that is the assassination of the Archduke on the Hume Bridge for the peaceful philosopher from the borders where I live in. And they're nice people, and all of it is ancient news, but he was gunned down on the Hume Bridge, and that is what started World War I. And but that is not necessarily, if you read the chapter on Boris on Wikipedia, I can't understand why I can't find it now.
This is a list of notable free. Whatever it's gone. Where's it gone? Was it just done that? Oh, good sir. No, that was the other one, wasn't it? Start taking it on. Wikipedia. So it says Alexander Boris Pfeffel.
Yes, so that was found out by that team that look at on a Friday night at everybody's genealogy. But the real story was just released, and I published it on the internet, on Facebook, on YouTube, and that is the last couple of videos that I was able to make, and they got immediately in the first couple of weeks 6,000 hits, and that is the families that are let me see if I can find.
No, I can't see it. No.
And I can't even see my website page now on the listings. No, so what does it say? Read down until you see the word Kamal on Donald's profile, on Boris's profile.
On Boris Johnson's, I can't see Kamal on there at all.
So Kamal is his grandpa.
Right, it says Johnson was educated at Eton College, Oxford. He presented at Oxford University, became Brussels correspondent after later columnist. His influence after it. Johnson showed ministry under Conservative leaders, blah, 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 resigned. He was active, so Johnson, MP. Are we going down to his, right, from childhood?
No, his grandpa was Kemal, and they are that is the Maharal of Prague, and that is the Sultans of Swing, that is the earliest Lubavitcher bankers. All of them are tied into the same blonde hair syndicate, and I had the picture zoomed in on my screen when I was preparing it, but I cannot find even the page that the pictures were on. Devine section result. That looks better.
All about is what's it about who he is or where he's from. It's not telling
So there's Boris Johnson, electoral history, MP for Henley, Mayor of London, MP for Uxbridge, South Ruislip, Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, 2015 to the present. And he was a teacher at the Geelong School where Rupert Murdoch attended and Prince Charles attended. But he's the